Hi bookish friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another book haul because I've received a ton of new books and I just wanted to share them all with you guys. Alright, the first section of books I'm going to go into are my mystery, thriller, and horror books. So the first book that I have to share is My Ex, the Antichrist by Craig DeLuey. It says that it's a horror novel with a twisted tale of love, heartbreak, and the apocalypse. We all have bad exes, but Lily's just happens to be the Antichrist. So it sounds really interesting. I'm curious as to how they got connected to each other. It seems like there is a little bit of like music inspiration in this one, and I don't know how it's going to play out. Hopefully there'll be some more humorous aspects to this as well, because this sounds like a very comedic concept. Next, I have Uncanny Valley Girls by Zephyr Lisowski. This is a collection of essays and short stories on horror, survival, and love, and sounds like there's a lot of different topics that are discussed in this one. It says it's about the strange and absurd beauty of horror films, the complications of gender, and the insidiousness of class ascension, and also how violence can affect our inner reflections. And it's this 27-year-old poet who's telling all of these essays and stories, and I think it's gonna be like kind of a critique of how horror movies reflect something about ourselves, so I'm curious to see how that'll go. And it's the first collection of horror stories that I have, so I'd love to try it out to see how I like them. Alright, so the next book I have is Brat by Gabriel Smith, and it also came with this really cute hat, so I'm very thankful to the publisher for sending me both the book and the hat. I'm excited to be able to wear the hat around, and it is like a thriller mystery novel, so it's about this like haunted house kind of vibe. It's about this protagonist who is dealing with grief, inheritance, and the ghosts of the past, and he's trying to figure out what to do with his parents' belongings because he goes back to his family home after his father has died, but he finds that not everything is as it seems in the home. Things are mutating and changing over time. There are strange people and figures emerging, and he's trying to make sense of all the hauntings kind of going on. So it seems like it's a ghost story as well, and I'm curious to see what I'll think of this. I haven't read too many haunting stories or ghost stories yet, so I'd like to try it out. Next, I have Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake. It sounds like this is a story of lust and trying to eat your fill, but in a metaphorical sense. It's about sorority girls and wealthy moms, and they're practicing a sinister new wellness trend. So I think it'll be interesting to dive into the lives of very rich people and the kind of cultish practices of sororities. I think that sororities as a concept are very interesting to dive into, and there are a lot of thriller components that can be associated with a sorority, so I think it'll be a very exciting and thrilling one to dive into. This next book is The Royal Free by Carl Sugar, and it follows a man who's recently been widowed, and he has like a very boring job as a copy editor, but meanwhile London is kind of disintegrating around him and there's like a lack of humanism. The situation seems very grim outside. There are a lot of riots going on, and he's trying to navigate his grief, taking care of his 6-month-old baby, and working with some very eccentric editors, and he also finds himself the target of a violent gang of North London teenagers. So it sounds like it's a mix of a home invasion thriller and a workplace comedy combined, and I think it'll be a really cool one to dive into. I like that it combines the comedic aspects with the thriller aspects, and I think that'll make it more palatable for me. Next, I have Love by Tales from the Alpha Art Gallery by Cynthia St. Aubin, and this one says that it's a first book in a snarky supernatural mystery series, so that already has my attention peaked. Again, I'm not a big mystery person, but I do like supernatural elements to my stories, and she has to solve a murder, save the day, and importantly feed her cats. So I think it's really cool that she's like a cat lady in this one. I love cats myself, and I think they're underrepresented in the literary world. I think it'll be a fun and exciting read to dive into, and I can't wait to try it. Next, I have Five Found Dead by Sularig Gentile, and this is a story about a crime fiction author who's won a brutal battle, and he has to have intense medical treatment. So he and his sister are heading to Paris, hoping for rest and rejuvenation. His sister is dealing with literary ghosts on the train, and she thinks that this will help awaken Joe's muse again, and he'll be inspired to write. So their first evening is spent together getting to know some of their fellow travelers, and he kind of seems to be inspired, but then this trip becomes like a crime scene. This is giving me like Poirot vibes, like Agatha Christie whodunit vibes, and I think that it'll be really interesting to see who is the person that did the killing in this one. I really like the whodunit vibe of it, and I like that it all takes place on the train. I've seen a few Agatha Christie adaptations and I've really enjoyed them, so I think that this will be one that'll challenge my reading taste but will be very enjoyable all the same. Alright, so the last mystery/thriller book that I have to share is The Ghost of Gwendolyn Montgomery by Clarence A. Haynes. And this is following a woman who seems to have an idealized life. She is a very powerful publicist, and she seems to have a perfect life, but she has a lot of long buried secrets that could unravel everything. She had a bizarre incident at the Brooklyn Museum, and she realizes that there's some nefarious things happening behind the scenes, especially as a queer Latinx psychic from her past has come back, and he's caught up in a love triangle with a ghost and his mortal ex. It sounds like a very ghostly and haunting story. I can't wait to dive into this one, and I think it'll be really interesting to learn more about this woman's secrets. I like it when a main character has a lot of hidden depths, so I can't wait to try this one out. Okay, so next I want to dive into the fantasy and sci-fi books that I've recently received. First, I have Shield of Sparrows by Daphne Perry, and this is about a story with gods and deities, and it says that long ago that they unleashed monsters upon the 5 kingdoms of Kalandara to remind people that they are insignificant, and the main character didn't need a deity to remember that she was powerless. She is a princess, and she's never had any kind of autonomy over her life. She has a lot of just empty traditions that she follows. While her sister loves it, she doesn't like to be part of the charade, and then she doesn't really feel like she has a purpose until an infamous monster hunter comes to her shores, and a prince walks into her father's throne room to ruin her life. And so she learns that not all of the myths that she was told were make-believe, some of them are real. So it sounds like a very interesting quest journey story. I think that the main character will learn a lot about herself, and it might have some romantic elements in this. So I think it'll be a really fun romantasy to dive into. Next, I have The Duke Steals Hearts and Other Body Parts by Elias Cold. It's about a trans teenager who steals body parts with magic, and they're investigating a string of missing girls as he begins to fall for one of them from afar. He has magical abilities that allow him to remove limbs and steal body parts, and everyone who knows of his abilities is afraid of him, except for one person, and he seems to love him, but it comes with conditions. So he has to keep stealing these body parts in order to keep his love, and the man claims that his sister was taken, but he can't pay for these body parts until she's found. So it sounds like it's got a little bit of mysterious aspects to it, but he does have the magical abilities, and I think that it's very interesting that he can steal body parts. I wonder how this weighs on his psyche, on his consciousness, and I think it'll be a really cool one to try out. Next, I have Goodbye My Princess by Fei Wo Si-kun. It is a translated story, so I think it was written in Mandarin or Chinese first, and I think it's gonna be a really interesting one. It says that Ku Xiaofeng has been living in the Li Empire for 3 years. She is a naive bride, and she has everything that she could ever want as crown princess, everything except for the prince's hearts. And her husband is a heartless boy. He is cruel, jealous, and ruthless, and he's given his adolescence to contend for the throne, and now he is considered the heir and largely ignores his bride. The bride doesn't really mind as much. She spends her time kind of cavorting through the streets, but one day she meets another boy who piques her interest, and he claims to be a sweetheart from a life she can't remember having lived. So she has to puzzle out her feelings for her husband and for this new stranger, and she doesn't realize that there's like a price to be paid. I think it'll be interesting. It has a love triangle aspect, and I do want to see this princess kind of come into her own in this story. She seems very naive, very reticent at the beginning, so I think it'll be a journey of self-discovery as well. Next, I have Curandera by Irinosen Koji, and this one I didn't really know where to classify it, but it says that it's set between the 17th century and contemporary London, so it's set in 2 different time periods. It follows rebirth and redemption and a mythical tale of metamorphic recalibrations. It takes place in Cape Verde when the appearance of a mysterious stranger coincides with a lot of strange events. This stranger appears to be a disciple of Oni, an omnipotent and loving, vengeful deity. And in contemporary London, it follows a botanist who lives with a Haitian musician, and they're bound together by sheer descent from Oni, and they travel to another realm to complete a secret sacred task. And I think it's going to be another quest story. It sounds really interesting. It has like some folklore magic happening in this one, so I can't wait to try it out. And I don't really have a full sense of what it is just from the synopsis, but I'm sure through reading it, I'll be able to give you more details about it. Next, I have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is another fantasy by her, and I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I didn't really love that one, but I am willing to give her another go because I think V.E. Schwab's writing could still be for me. So this one takes place in 3 different timelines. It takes place in 1532 Santo Domingo, in 1827 London, and 2019 Boston, and I think these stories are going to be interconnected in some way. So the 1532 story is a story about hunger. It's about a young girl who grows up wild wild and her beauty is outmatched by her dreams of escape, but she knows that she can only ever be a prize in a game played by men, and an alluring stranger offers her an alternative path, so she wants to take that route. In 1827 London, it's about a young woman who's living an idyllic but cloistered life in her family's estate until she sees a moment of forbidden intimacy, and she is sent to London because of that. And she has a tender heart and seemingly impossible wishes, but she wants to get her freedom, and the price for that is much higher than she ever imagined. In 2019 Boston, we are following Alice, and she's going to college, and she thinks that this is her chance to be someone new. She's moved halfway across the world, leaving her old life behind, but she has an out-of-character one-night stand, and it leaves her questioning everything about her life, and so she wants answers and she wants some revenge. So I think that all these stories will interconnect. I'm curious to see how they'll weave together, and I'm hoping to really love V.E. Schwab's writing going forward. Next, I have The Words of Dr. L and Other Stories by Karen E. Bender, and this sounds like it's more of a dystopian book, but not really a fantasy, and it's grounded in both contemporary United States and variety of dystopias, and it examines the evolving dynamics of a nuclear family during adolescence, motherhood, empty nesting, etc., etc. And it also follows a young woman who's trying to learn about the magical words to terminate an unwanted pregnancy, a mother who has discovered an extra child in her home she forgot about, and a couple that's separated from their son and encased in globes orbiting the earth. So it's about society developing a terrible plan to leave a burning planet for a life on Mars, and it's kind of exploring all these ideas of aging, control, power, freedom, and I think it'll be interesting to see how all the stories interconnect and interweave. I am curious to see what Karen's commentary is going to be in this story, and I think that it's something that will be a very poignant read, one that will be very applicable because of the climate change that's happening in the world and just all of the craziness and chaos going on. All right, finally for this section, we have We Could Be Magic by Marissa Meyer, and it came with these really cute scrunchies, so I'm really excited to have these. And I always love when books come with extra little merch like this. And it says that it follows Tabitha Laurie, who growing up always saved her belief in true love even when her parents' marriage fell apart. She's landed her dream job at a theme park, and she wants to make magical memories with the kids, guests, and for other superfans. She has to audition for a coveted princess role, and soon her dreams will come true. And she has only one issue: the heroes and heroines are all very thin, and she is not. So no matter how much she lives for the magic, she just doesn't fit the park's ideal of being a princess. So she's given a job working at one of the food places instead. So basically she's gonna have to come up with like a plan B to create her own magic without getting fired and still having her happily ever after. I think it'll be a really cute graphic novel story, and I love graphic novels. I love seeing the artwork, and I can't wait to dive into this. This will be such a quick, lighthearted, and fun read. All right, so the next section of books that I want to share are some contemporary books and also contemporary romance. So first I have You Had Me at Hello World by Rona Wang, and this follows a 16-year-old who's desperate to ditch her dead-end small town. She's invited to a highly selective hackathon at MIT, and she seizes the opportunity to jet across the country, spend the summer building an app, and trying to snag a top prize. She teams up with another kid named Koi, and he's known for being like a coding genius, but he also has soft and gentle eyes, and he can make anyone laugh. He's someone that she can easily fall for, and he is dating her roommate. So she kind of has to deal with all of these feelings and also continue to work with him and also deal with a lot of sabotage in the story. I think it'll be an interesting like contemporary story, a little bit of romance involved in it maybe. I don't know exactly how this is gonna all play out, especially since her main love interest is dating her roommate, but I'm really curious to see how it'll all play out. I think it'll be a really fun contemporary story to dive into, and some lighthearted YA is always a nice break from some deeper, denser reads. Next I have Daybreak Volume 1 by Muso, and I feel like I butchered that, but it's about Marcus who has a crush and Cog who is completely unprepared for the hijinks that will follow. It's a gay romance graphic novel, and I think that alone just gets me super excited for it. It's about these two students in senior year. They have very different friend groups and they've started hanging out, and they're kind of learning more about each other, getting to know each other through making lunch for each other and all of that. It's a lot about their bonding and their relationship and just how wholesome their relationship is. I think it'll be a really cute one to fly through. This is the first volume, so I believe there's going to be more volumes to come, and I'm also going to be featuring this on my Instagram soon. Next I have Best Summer Ever by Jessica Consolo. This is following Jenna, who doesn't like to be out of control. She likes to make her own decisions. So Jenna doesn't like it when people make very big life-changing decisions without consulting her, but she finds that everyone is suddenly making plans and moving on without her. And it also follows Olivia, who has learned that her long-term boyfriend has cheated on her, and she's trying to figure out if she should forgive him or end things for good. But also romance is beginning to spark between her and her ex's best friend Dylan, and she is left to wonder what's going to come next. Jenna decides she's going to throw a weekend-long summer extravaganza at her family's lake house, and it's gonna be like a big party with all these teenagers gathered together. I think it'll be very interesting to see all the hijinks they get up up to in this story, and I think it'll end up being a very fun summer read to dive into. Next I have Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. This is following Marcus, who has a secret. The world knows him as a star of a very big television show and fanfiction readers as something else, but he's really frustrated with the show's writing. So Marcus is releasing his frustrations about the show by publishing fanfiction about the internet's favorite couple, but if anyone found out, he'd be finished in Hollywood. It also follows April Whittier, who has secrets of her own. She has hidden that she is into cosplay and fanfic from her real life, but not anymore, so she wants to post her latest creation on Twitter, and her plus size take goes viral. Marcus asks her out to spite internet critics, and the truth becomes stranger than fan fiction. They go on a date, and he realizes that he wants more from April than just a one-time publicity stunt. But he discovers that she's a secret fangirl and his online friend, and they have more than one secret to keep from each other. So I think it'll be really cute to read about this. I love that they're both really into this fandom and to this story, and I think that I haven't read a lot of stories that feature that. Their romance sounds like it'll be a very heartwarming read. Next I have Pioneer Summer by Elena Malisova and Katerina Silvanova. It takes place in 1986, but it's about a star-crossed gay romance that takes reader by storm, and it made international news when it was banned in Russia. It follows a 16-year-old named Yurka Konev who's been sent off for another summer at Pioneer Camp. They are impulsive, forthright, and branded as a troublemaker, and he is facing a lot of boredom and dread, but he is pushed into working in the camp's theater production, and he meets Volodoya, and he finds himself drawn to the older boy, and the older boy also likes him. The two boys grow closer, and they fear the consequences of their illegal attraction, but they can't fight the feelings. And more than 20 years later, Yura returns to the abandoned camp to reminisce on their relationship that changed his life, and he discovers that not all history is destined to remain in the past. This was written by a Ukrainian and Russian duo, and they became a runaway TikTok sensation. So I think that is really interesting that it explores the anti-LGBTQ plus laws in Russia at this time, and it'll be a great story to dive into. I think this is a conversation that really needs to be had, and it'll be done through a very fun lens of this cute romance. Alright, so next I have Boyfriends Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a story that follows a polyamorous relationship between a prep, a goth, a jock, and a nerdy type, and they aren't really given like character names or anything like that. They're just rather archetypes in this. I've already read the first 3 volumes of the graphic novels, and I have yet to read the 4th one, but I will be reading it soon. They're super fun, fluffy reads that you can really fly through. They don't really have a lot of deep messaging in them, but they're fun nonetheless, and I think that you'll really enjoy going through them if you're interested in LGBTQ plus romances. They're really great for Pride Month, and I'm so glad to be reading them and to have them in my collection as well. Next I have another graphic novel called You and Me on Repeat, and it's about Chris and Alicia, and he wants to have his perfect first kiss with his crush Andy, and he'll try to break free from the time loop that has him repeating graduation day over and over. And Alicia's valedictorian, she's a total nerd, and she knows that it'll take more than one kiss to skip the loop that they're trapped in together. Also, she doesn't think that Chris has a real shot with Andy. They were once close friends, they have previous history, but they're not really friends anymore. But you never know, they might reconnect and rekindle in this one. I think it'll be a really cute one. I think it's interesting the premise that they keep looping through graduation day over and over and over again. I know there's been some movies that have that same premise, so it'll be fun to explore this in a graphic novel. Alright, so next I have The Siren and the Star by Colby Cedar Smith. This is a YA novel that's written in verse. So it kind of is about this introverted homeschooled vocal prodigy, and she's trying to become a star. She's been training her whole life, and she is trying to enter the New England Conservatory of Music. She's chosen to form an ensemble with them and compete in a prestigious musical festival, and it is dual timelines, so it also follows Barbara in the 17th century. She dreams of making her mark on the world through the gift of her song, and she wants to fight against the path of being like a servant girl, which she's kind of been forced onto. She wants a life full of intellect and pleasure and independence, and she's also chafing against the restrictions placed on her gender as a female. And Lula comes across Barbara's bold and seductive music and immediately feels kinship with this strange female composer. And Lula, this modern day girl, soon realizes that she has to reclaim her voice after an incident happened at her school, and she needs to connect with ghosts of the past in order to find her true song again. So I think it's about this modern day girl looking into this past composer, and it also follows a little bit of the life of the composer as we are seeing it through the lens of the modern girl navigating her singing voice and trying to set up an identity for herself as a singer and using her talent in that way. Alright, the final section of books that I want to cover are literary fiction, nonfiction, and historical fiction. Alright, so the only nonfiction that I have is Truth Medicine, Healing and Living Authentically Through Psychedelic Psychotherapy by Michael Ryoshin Sapiro Saidi, and I think this will be a really interesting one to dive into. I did major in psychology in undergrad, and I am a counseling master's student, so it'll be a great one to enhance my knowledge of psychedelic psychotherapy as a form of treatment for my clients in the future. It'll definitely definitely be more of an informative read than anything else, but I think it'll be really helpful and impactful. I also have If I Could Go Back by Brianna Johnson. This is following Aaliyah, who finds that family is everything for her. Her cousin is her best friend, and her grandpa is her rock star. He is a little bit dramatic, but he's the one that's raised her, and she can't stop thinking about what's missing, her parents, who aren't really present in her life. She tries to contact her mom and risks upsetting her family, who's always been there, but her grandfather refuses to explain why her parents gave her up, and she just can't silence the anxious voice telling her that she's not good enough because of this. But it's not her mom that she gets into contact with, it's her dad, and he turns out to be very immature, but very fun to hang out with. And then the rest of the family finds out that they're in contact and old secrets are going to be forced out. I think it'll be a really fun journey of self-discovery in this one. I know that a lot of children really feel that absence when their parents aren't involved in their lives and they try to figure out what's missing. So it'll be a good journey for her to go on to learn about her parents and more about herself as well, and figure out just what's been going on in her family all these years. Okay, for historical fiction, first we have The Teacher of Auschwitz by Wendy Holden. This follows the brutality in the Holocaust that's happening, and it's in the shadows of this. There is a wooden hut where the children are learning to stage plays, write poetry, and do all of that. Within those four walls, they're able to kind of paint cartoons and be real children, and the youngest prisoners were fed with better food and even taught to imagine that one day they would be free and be able to live without fear. Their guiding light was a 27-year-old gay Jewish athlete, and he risks his life every day to protect the children from mortal danger, but time is running out for them, and they're trying to figure out how to survive the really harsh and cruel circumstances of the camps. I think this will be a very emotional read. I think it'll be one that will be a real tearjerker for me, one that I would like to explore. Next, I have The Book of Lost Hours by Haley Del Fuso, and this takes place in 3 different timelines. So it takes place in Nuremberg, 1938, following an 11-year-old who's been hidden by her father from approaching forces in a mysterious place called the Time Place, a library where all the memories of the past are stored inside of books. She's trapped and spends her adolescence walking through the memories of those who've lived before her, and she discovers that government spies are entering the time space to destroy volumes and maintain the preferred version of history, and she's trying to salvage the past and create her own book until one day in 1949 she meets an American timekeeper who offers her a chance at another life, setting in motion a series of events that puts her own existence in peril. And we also go to Boston in 1965. Amelia is mourning the death of her uncle and guardian. She's approached by the head of the CIA's secretive program, and this head of the CIA tells her about the existence of the time space, which has been accessed only by people who are designated to watch this, and the intricate mechanisms have been lost to history. So she's trying to get her help in order to recover a strange book her uncle had once sought. But Amelia enters the time space and finds that her uncle may not have been the man she thought, and the government may have another sinister reason for bringing her there. I think it's interesting that it does take place in World War II and 1965, but the focus is on this like mysterious aspect of this time space. I'm curious to see how that will work within the narrative, and hopefully it'll be one that I will really enjoy. Next, I have Blonde Dust by Tatiana de Rosnay, and this is a story that follows a scorching summer in the American West in 1960, set against the backdrop of filming a film called The Misfits, which is an imagined friendship formed between Marilyn Monroe and a young maid. So Pauline is a chambermaid who works at the Mapes Hotel in Reno, and she's asked to step in for a colleague and clean Suite 614, who's told that all the rooms were empty, but she finds a sleepy woman, and this is a Mrs. Miller, who is apparently Marilyn Monroe, and her stay in Reno coincides with the breakdown of her marriage to Arthur Miller and the filming of what would be her last movie. Over the course of a few weeks, she forms a friendship with a young woman who grew up tending wild Mustang horses and whose life would be changed forever. So I think it'll be really interesting. It's kind of exploring a side of Marilyn Monroe that hasn't really been seen before, and I'm curious to know about how much of this is steeped in true reality and true events and how much it was made up, but I think it'll be a cool one to explore nonetheless. Alright, so next I have The Blossoming Summer by Anna Rose Johnson. This also takes place in 1940 England, and this is the only world that Rosemary's ever known, but as World War II kind of changes her world, her life is also changing. With France conquered, she and her parents and her brothers flee to America to escape the Blitz, and her grandmother's house in North Wisconsin is safe, but she discovers that her parents have been keeping a big secret from her. She and her family are Anishinaabe, and her father is not proud of it. Her grandmother, however, is, and she's a fashionable, independent, and fiery old lady. She begins to teach Rosemary the language. So she's far from home, but now she's feeling connected to a hidden part of her identity, and she is forming a really close relationship with her grandmother and a local boy who loves gardening and wants to help her see the beauty in her circumstances. She's growing into her new life, and she realizes that she's maybe not as far from home as she thought she was. It's a classic girls fiction about memory, family, and identity. I think it'll be really interesting to explore. It's not your typical World War II historical fiction, and I think it's interesting that she has like native blood and she's kind of learning about that identity as well, and I think that it'll definitely be a very intriguing read. Alright, finally I just have have a few literary fictions. All right, so first I have Bug Hollow by Michelle Uneven. This is about Sally, who at 8 years old, her brother went missing in the summer that he graduated from high school. He eventually turned up at the bucolic Bug Hollow in Northern California, and he is kind of in the culture of the 70s. He found joy in the commune life there, but later died in a freak accident. And from that point, the world of the Samuelsons never felt the same, especially after Julia, Ellis's girlfriend, showed up pregnant on their doorstep, and each of them has sought their own solace. Sybil kind of forced herself into teaching and tries to numb her pain that way after the loss of her husband. Phil found respite in a love that developed while he was working as an engineer in Saudi Arabia. Katie is a high-achieving middle child and comes home to try to make peace with her mother after a cancer diagnosis, and Sally's become the caretaker to Eva, the child that Ellis never knew. So Michelle ends up writing these very enthralling stories and kind of interconnects them and weaves them. It kind of is the stories about middle-class America as they are juggling all these different issues like addiction. So they're all just trying to figure out how to continue moving forward and find a good way of life. And it's a very powerful story of empathy and trying to kind of navigate all these relationships. So I like all these stories that follow these family relationships and all of that. I like family dramas, and I think that it's really interesting to see how all these characters interconnect and interweave. There's just so much that you can explore here, and I think this novel will have a lot of complexity and have a really good message to tell. All right, so next I have Swimming in Paris by Colombe Schneck, and this is about a 50-year-old who was taking swimming lessons and finally realized that they are able to do this, that they had been very worried and tense about it, but they learned how to kind of expand themselves in that way and how their body is allowing them to become fully themselves. And this is a coming of age story that happens in 3 different movements. It's very well controlled, it has a lot of pathos, but it still invites the reader to evolve in terms of their sexuality, their bodily autonomy, friendship, loss, all of that, and still is very intimate to the story. Follows teenage abortion and long friendship, midlife romance, a lot of very deep topics like that, and I think it'll be an interesting one to explore. I think it's 3 different stories, so I think it'll be interesting to see how they all come together and form this one collective collection. Next I have What We Leave Behind by Sue Halpern. This is about kind of questioning how we are raised and if we are just hardwired by genetic inheritance. It follows an adoptive mother who dies in an accident, and this high school senior kind of doubles down on trying to avoid learning anything about her birth parents. But with DNA testing being possible, she finds that there's secrets hidden in her DNA that may upend everything she knows about her family. And it also follows Candace, who is a successful woman in her 40s. She is collateral damage from her parents' tortured marriage, and she has a life of no attachments intentionally because of that. She's happy enough, but she has a chance encounter with Melody's father, and this challenges her assumptions and forces her to reimagine who she is. I think this will have a lot of characters questioning themselves and being challenged in their beliefs, and I always think that's a great thing to read about. I think it'll be very poignant, very impactful, and I can't wait to dive into it. All right, so next I have Deep Breath by Rita Halas. This is another translated fiction, and it follows Vera, whose mind and body are on a precipice. She has left her marital home and her 2 young daughters to live with her father after her husband has a lot of violent outbursts, and she's kind of reaching a breaking point. She's experienced insomnia, difficulty eating, and over the course of the year that follows, she ends up getting back together with a high school romance. She looks to her divorced parents for guidance, tries to go to couples therapy and become a good mother, and develops a cocaine dependency and tries to become an artist again. So she's dealing with a lot of different things, as you can tell from this narrative, and I think that it's really interesting to discover all the emotional rawness and realness that happens in this as her marriage is kind of crumbling around her and trying to figure out how to start a new life and breathe again outside of this relationship that's been very oppressive for her. So I think it'll be a very deep read, very important to read about, and I think that this is going to be one that a lot of women will relate to because women are the ones that usually end up getting stuck in difficult relationships, but finding her way out of this will be very emotional but also very impactful and important to read about. And finally, I also have another translated fiction. It's called We the Casertas by Aurora Venturini. This was translated from Spanish, and it's a story that follows Shella, who has a chest of old letters. She was born to wealthy parents, and she seeks to be free and use her extraordinary intellect. She wants to find love, become a guardian, have a partner in crime, and as she grows older, she has academic success, which is tempered by her rebelliousness. And she's heartbroken through a torrid relationship with an older man, and she starts to seek solace in drugs and traveling. So she makes friends with a man in Chile, and they begin falling in with an eccentric group of aristocrats from France. It sounds like a very chaotic story. She's trying to find this place in the world, and I think that her family puts so much pressure on her because they're very wealthy and well-to-do, so I think that kind of leads her to going off the rails a little bit and trying to find her own path away from that. I think it'll be a very interesting one to read about. I always think that learning how these very rich families end up affecting the children is important to read about, about, and I think it'll just be one that I will genuinely enjoy. Okay, so that's gonna be it for me for this book haul. I know that was a little bit long-winded, but these are all books that I've recently gotten. Have you recently bought any new books, gotten any new books from the library? Are you anticipating any new releases? I'd love to know. Please leave it in the comments down below. And if you watched to this point in the video, please leave me a book stack emoji just to let me know that you made it to the end. I want to thank each and every one of you that watches one of my videos. I appreciate you all, and wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well, and I'll see you for the next one soon. Bye!